Welcome ICS4C folks. Lesson 4 or 2.4 on Introduction to Objects 2. This is going to be a big lesson. I'll try and bust it up so you don't end the period in the middle of a lesson or something like that. So I'll try and make them a bunch of small ones rather than a couple of huge ones. Um, this one goes with the Objects 2 tracks in Code Academy. So if you're not done that, you might want to go back and do that, finish that off. Excuse me. A few things. Um, some new keywords that will help us out. The type of JavaScript keyword will return the type of a JavaScript variable. And so I got an example there. There's a little piece of code where we just assigned the value of 519 to the variable area code. And if I logged the type of, this returns what type it is. So it's number. So I'm just going to show you how that works. I've got a little JavaScript code in Notepad++. And remember, to run that, you have to have an HTML skeleton that is hooked up to it. So I've called it objects2_4 mess around, and there's my JavaScript, and there's my HTML, and I actually launched the HTML, and it says press F12 to see what it did. I did that. I pressed F12, and then the first little bit of code printed number. The second little bit of code printed objects, and we'll show you why that makes sense in a moment. Um, which this does make sense because this is a number. But look, if I were to put that in quotes like that, I'm going to save that now and relaunch that. Refresh. Then it says it's a string. And of course, the big difference is, we can do calculations on numbers but not strings. So it's important for us to know what type of our variables are, what type our variables are. Back in the note, uh, there's another note. Oh yeah, by the way, I hope you have this. So you don't have to type this. I've posted this on Edmodo. So don't type madly this. You've got it on Edmodo. Just add your own little details to it. Like for instance, you might want to add the detail that if I put quotes around this, it's a string instead. You knew that from grade 11, but that's a good reminder. And notice the curly brackets goes with an object, right? Square brackets goes with an array. Let's see that working. Square brackets. Let's say if I went like this, made that square brackets instead, and saved and refreshed, if it would tell me that it's an array. I hope so. It says object. Did I save that? Yes, it says object, but that is the array stuff. So obviously JavaScript can't tell too much difference between arrays and objects, but that's interesting. Back there, I press refresh, and it does say that it's an object still. Great. Next little tidbit. These are a couple of tidbits. The built-in method has own property. Will allow us to check if an object has a particular field or key called property in this. It was called a property in the Code Academy lesson. So I'll call these fields, I'll call them keys, I'll call them attributes. The Code Academy is calling them property, although they refer to them as different things. Remember, we're talking about like the name part, not the value part. So the name part has own property. So if this is our object, remember, if this is our object here, I'm gonna copy the whole thing. Just double click there, copy that, go to my Notepad++, my JavaScript, save that up again so I can show you that this works. Notice these are all numbers. There's a string, and phone num, remember, is the object name. This is in literal notation, not constructor notation. This is literal notation. Has own property dash. Notice that dash is in quotes, so it'll check and see if it has dash. Now, does phone num have own property dash? Well, yes. Does phone num have own property name? No, it doesn't. So I'm gonna get rid of these. There we go. Save that and then refresh that, and we'll see that it does what I promised that it would do. So the first one was true, the second one was false. Okay, fine. Who cares? Why do we care about this? This makes no sense. I can't see any situations where we would want to check this. Well, when we're dealing with objects, and these are often bigger programs than we'll write, remember, before we start doing some calculations or before we start making alterations to web pages and stuff, these things like type of and has own property is a way of checking to make sure your calculation is going to work before you actually go through the calculation. So, for instance, one thing we could do is if phone num has own property name, if this is false, so I could say if oops, I want to copy that. Control Z, copy that. If this part, copy, is false, then maybe I'd want to add that. So if this doesn't have if that doesn't have that property, maybe I want to add it, right? We learned about adding phone num dot name equals whatever, and then that way this would have that property name. So and then I'll console log this again just to show you that I hope that worked. Oh, equals equals equals, right? 3 equal signs. Save that, see if that worked. See, it went true for the dash, false for the first time, and then we added it, console log whether it was there then, and yes, indeed it is there. Okay. Fine. Next is some more review. I'll keep going on this. The for in loop, and again, this part's review. The for in loop gives us an easy way to loop through the key name and their values. So if this was our object that we're dealing with, the for var I in phone num. I is sort of the index of the loop, but what it does, just like it did in arrays, remember, it goes through phone num and prints off all of the different key names. So for var and phone num, these are, when we talked about JavaScript, these are the variable names, and then we could talk about the values by having phone num I. So I loops through area code, then it's first 3, and then it's dash, and then it's last 4. Notice that if I did it this way, it would actually print those values. So when I actually use this in my JavaScript, what it's going to do, it's going to print, the first line will print out the key names, which was area code, first 3, dash, last 4, and remember we added name as well, so it'll print out name, and then the second line will print out those values. Okay, so let's have a look at that in action. And there they are. There's all of the name followed by its value. Name, value, name, value, name, value, name, value. And that's actually what we can, very similar to that when we just print out the object. Again, useful tools in dealing with objects. How they will fit into our programs, probably we won't use these things too much. Maybe they will. Maybe we'll look through an object for a certain value or whatever, but these are more just to let you know that these are things that we can do on objects. All right, before I go on with the next video, I'm going to stop and have, like I said, I wanted these videos to stay short.